All right, welcome back to MicroStart Electronics. And today we're going to do a comparison between Arduino platforms versus like the microchip MPLAB programming kind of environment, and then also the STM environment with the STM Cube and their ST links. So starting with the easiest one to talk about and probably most widely known is the Arduino. So Arduino is a good beginner platform. It has a board. You always buy it with a board. There's a USB to serial chip on there, and so you just plug it in and you can write code for it and program it, and you don't have to do a lot with that. And then it always comes on a board, like I said, so there's also a regulator on here on the back side, so it can power it off USB. It powers the chip, and then also you have easy ways to connect up to, like this is an Ethernet module, and so now quickly I can connect up and be running with Ethernet. So hardware-wise, these are pretty simple. So now let's move on to microchip. So microchip has some really good options for people that don't want to maybe make boards. They want to just put the chips right into breadboard. So they have through-hole options. Now a lot of manufacturers are starting to not even sell options with through-hole, and we're going to get to that in a second. So these are some boards I'd made, and I have sockets, so I can take the chip out and I can remove it, and I can put a chip in different boards or replace them if they break. Now, that's really nice for through-hole, for hobbyists or people that don't have access to making boards. And you can also take these chips and put them into a breadboard. So there's some options there. Now, moving on to STM is a little bit trickier because they don't sell any of their chips as surface mount. All their chips are pretty much ARM chips, and none of them have a surface mount option. So I make my own boards. Now, the problem with this is if you do something wrong or you want to change a pinout, it's just a little bit trickier because you have to spend time designing it. So I would say STM on that side of things is probably the hardest as far as hardware goes. Yeah, so you can buy a breakout board with STM, and I think one of them is called the Blue Pill, and if you want to do that, you can as well. Or you could always put the STM on a breakout, like a breakout board or a development board as well. So there's that options. Now, what I want to talk about is the actual programming of it. So we already talked about this. You program it through the USB. So one of the reasons why I'm making the video is because if you've never programmed with any of these before, you kind of want to try to figure out like, what options do I have and what's going to be the easiest, and then long-term solutions as well. So the problem I have is that Picket 3 is going to be no longer supported in the latest microchip MPLAB. So the Picket 3s I've had for quite a few years now, and I liked that microchip would post the schematics for the Picket 3 as well as the compiled code so people could make these, and these are at affordable cost. Now, the newer Pickets aren't that affordable in my opinion, but they do have the MPLAB Snap, and that's like $15 if you buy it right from their site, and it's newer than this. So they have options, I guess, but I don't like that this is no longer supported. And then for STM is probably my favorite, and this is the reason why I like STM as much as I do. So STM has these little ST links. Now these are pretty fast, and they are small, and also you can hack them. So I have like my own USB cable added to this one. They put the pinout right on the body of ST link. I like that because always on the case, because always what happens is you forget, and then you have to look it up every time. And the MPLAB, the microchip versions of these don't have the pinout, so I have to actually make my own little sticker and put it on there. So my opinion, I like the ST links the best of all the programming. And we're going to now talk about the IDEs, because another reason why I'm making the video is I've had some issues with certain IDEs, and I'm going to talk about those issues, and then you can conclude on your own which ones you want to use or which ones you like. So we're going to talk about the 3 different IDEs, and I'm going to show you a few things that might be important to you when picking a platform to design embedded systems or design anything you want trying to control or do anything. So for the Arduino, unfortunately, the Arduino is a little bit underpowered for a lot of things, especially if you're going to have like a TFT display and maybe a SD card and some temperature sensors, and pretty soon you add an Ethernet module on there. I mean, yeah, you can do quite a bit, and the better are you a programmer, the farther you can make the Arduino go. But it's not really necessarily good for like IoT stuff. So I mean, it depends on what you're really trying to do, obviously, so I'm going to preface with that. But what I've been doing is trying to use the ESP32 more, and I use that with the Arduino platform. Unfortunately,
it takes quite a long time to program or compile the code. Now, I'm obviously right here, if you want to use different libraries, you can just click. So if I close out of here and then you go back in here, you can see your libraries, and there's lots of different libraries to use. And so that's really nice, but the downside is the compile time for me for the ESP32. So the STM32 is here. And if you want to have all the libraries and stuff installed, you most likely have to create an account with ST and in order to get everything to work. But I haven't actually created an account or signed in yet. So right now I just have the chip. And so you can, if you want to configure something, you can go into your system core and configure, for example, your system, which is for programming. So you can say, hey, I want a serial wire program, and it'll automatically assign it to the pins. So that's your PA 14 and 13 are your system clock and data. So you can quickly assign stuff. You can use analog. Okay, I want the analog 1, and you can assign channel 0, and it will automatically configure. You can also click on here and do stuff with that. So that's kind of just a basic rundown of what the IDE looks like. So if you've never used the IDE, that's kind of what you'd expect. Now, I also want to show you what microchips looks like. So microchip has something very similar to STM. You have a kind of a grid here where you can pick different things. So if you want to use something, and here's the grid. Now, a lot of things, not everything will show up. Now, I2C and ADC are shown here because I had configured them at one time. If you want UART, for example, if you were to click on that and have that installed, you could enable it, and now it shows up down here. And then, like, for example, SPI. If you want to turn SPI on, you could click on it, it'll enable it, and then it'll show up down here. And then from there, you can pick which GPIO pins by double-clicking on them, and you can do this quite easily. So it's okay. Now, the problem I've had with MPLAB, as I said before, is they've dropped support for my debugger that I used and my programmer. So that's kind of frustrating. So microchip head does have good support. Maybe some better support than STM. I don't know. That's debatable. Now, I think microchip the IDE is slower than the STM. For me, the STM the cube is run better. So I want to know what you guys think about that. And I also think the chips are slightly cheaper with STM for what you get. You get an ARM processor. And so obviously, I think based on what you get and the power of the chip and everything, I personally like STM better. But the nice thing that with microchip was that you can get like this as a dip package, so you can buy dip packages still. So you can still like put them in a breadboard. So we talked about that. And then Arduino, it's easy to get going quickly. There's a lot of libraries built up. They're easy to use. I mean, it's made for people that like low entry point, meaning it's not super expensive and it's not hard to start using. So that's good. But with Arduino, the IDEs, the bootloader with the Arduino just makes it easy to program it, but also kind of takes away some of the, with the compiler and everything, kind of takes away some of the things that you even realize you're doing, like setting up a pin. There's all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. And so you don't really necessarily understand what's happening there, which if something goes wrong, it makes it a little hard maybe to troubleshoot. But there's so many people using Arduino that the support is like unlimited. So that's kind of my opinion on these things. And I'd say my go-to would be the STM. But I want to hear what you guys think. Like, do you like the STM? Do you like microchip, Arduino? I want to hear what other people think. And if you're new and never looked at this, this is kind of what this video is for. It's just, these are your options. And then there's other options outside of this, but these are kind of the ones that I've had available to me and I've seen more mainstream. Now, there's probably other things I'm missing, so put it in the comments below and we'll look at it later.